morning, everyone. Hello. Hello, Roland. Welcome to the Wolf Theiss, The Future of series. My name is Andrea Gritsch, and I have the pleasure of moderating this event. Throughout the series of Future of events, we're looking at a wide variety of disruptive technologies and innovation in different industry sectors. Together with leading experts in the areas of business, law, and technology, we explore current developments and future trends shaping the markets of tomorrow and influencing modern society. The future of computing is on today's agenda, hosted by my partner, Roland Marko, who is an enthusiastic data protector and firm believer in the magic of the cloud. Roland, what is the driver behind today's session?
Thank you, Andrea. I would think it's challenging enough to predict the future, but the future of computing is maybe even more so. Nevertheless, we are happy to host a number of top-notch experts to tackle this topic. As with agile software developments, the backlog of this seminar will be tackled in sprints of just 5 minutes, and I'm already very excited to see what challenges computing will have to face, especially against the backdrop of data protection, sustainability, and artificial intelligence.
Great, thanks. Before we jump right into it, a few housekeeping items. First, each speaker is asked to limit his or her speech to 5 minutes. We will display a virtual timeline counting backwards and indicating when the time is up. Second, I would kindly ask all participants to hold their questions until our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You are, of course, invited to submit your questions via our chat function at any time. And third, everybody please mute. Our first speaker of today is Richard Gendal on the topic of confidential computing and the reinvention of privacy. Richard is a Chief Technology Officer at R3 and a leading authority on distributed ledger systems and architectures. Richard currently brings Corda, the blockchain for regulated businesses, to life. Before that, he was the executive architect for banking and financial services at IBM UK. Richard, we're very happy to have you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I have a quiz question for you. What does the padlock in your web browser mean? You go to facebook.com to catch up with your friends' activities, and we've been taught over the last 20 years to look for the padlock in the address bar. That's how we know we're secure, right? The padlock means we're secure. But how can that be? If we really are secure, if that padlock is protecting us, why is everybody so paranoid about Facebook? Why are we so worried about what they're doing with our data? How can we be secure and not secure at the same time? What is going on? What does this padlock actually mean? And the answer, of course, is that padlock is telling you that you really are talking to Facebook. And it's telling you that nobody can intercept your data as it flows from you to them or back from them to you. But the reason we're worried about what Facebook might do with our data is because of what the padlock doesn't say. The padlock says nothing about what they can do with it once it arrives at their data center. So it's kind of we're in this kind of really weird situation where we can secure the information as it moves from us to them. And then once it arrives at their headquarters, the game is over. They can do whatever they want. It's mind-blowing when you realize that that's where the promise of web security ends. And companies have the same problem. When one firm sends information to another firm, the only thing that protects them and allows them to be sure that their customers in turn are protected are soft protections. The reach of GDPR, if you're in the EU, contract, reputation, things like that. It's soft protections that help us. It's not technological. And that problem is not just for data sharing between firms and for data sharing between firms and individuals. It is a real and present inhibitor to the wholesale migration of computing to the cloud. If you have a system that you've built over decades as a firm that processes your customers' most sensitive information, if you were to move that workload to the cloud, you become completely dependent on the integrity of that cloud provider and their employees. They can do whatever they want. Now, of course, their reputation and law means they usually don't, but there's nothing technological that can prevent them. So that's the fundamental problem of computer security that we're battling with today. And it comes down to a simple but profound insight, which is you cannot trust somebody else's computer. Once you've sent information to somebody else's computer, they control that computer. They can, in principle, do whatever they want with it. But what if that were not true? What if there were a technology that allowed us to fix that problem? What if it was possible? What if it were possible to know what would happen to your information before you sent it somewhere else? That would be game changing. If you knew that when you sent your information to Facebook, they could only do certain things with it. If you knew that when you as a firm sent data for processing by a third party, they could only do what you had said they could do and nothing else. Suddenly, a huge new world of opportunity would open up. Services that you were previously too frightened, literally too frightened to subscribe to, now become possible. And if you flip it around, if you're a firm who can make that promise to your customers, that you can promise to them what will happen to their data, suddenly you can gain market share from those who don't have that ability. The technology exists, but until very recently, it's been obscure and out of the mainstream. It's known as confidential computing, and it's been brought to the market by the world's major chip vendors, such as Intel and AMD, and it's been popularized and made possible on the major clouds. And at its absolute core, it has the following promise, that it allows a program running on a computer to remotely convince somebody else that this is the algorithm that is running, this is what will happen to your data, and even if we wanted to, we the service provider or we the cloud vendor, even if we wanted to, even if we hired the world's worst criminal, we could not change what it did and we could not see your data. So that's if you like, one of the cutting edges of the world's privacy technology markets. This is the wave that is coming. So imagine, just as an example, as I finish my time, is if you knew when you sent your healthcare records to a researcher for analysis, the only thing they could do is analyze them for a particular drug's efficacy, perhaps, but they couldn't sell that data to a third party. But that's what becomes possible. Until recently, the technology has been obscure and hard to use. The reason why I'm interested is I think my firm R3 with our Conclave product has a way to make it accessible and easy to use. But the reason why I think those listening and watching this webinar should care is this is probably a generational shift in technology, because this idea that it is now possible to build systems that can prove to their users what they can do and therefore by extension what they can't do, at some point, a regulator is going to get their head around this, and they're going to then come knocking and saying, why are you not using this? Why, back to the Facebook analogy, are you receiving data from your customers and then having no technological controls over how that data can be processed? Once they realize this is possible, it will soon become mandatory. So my recommendation is get ahead while you can get a competitive advantage from it, and then at the same time, build the skills you'll need for when it becomes unavoidably regulatorily mandated, because this wave is coming. Confidential computing is really going to be the next wave of computer security, I'm convinced. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Richard. That sounds indeed cutting edge. So thanks for that. Our second speaker now is Harald Leitenmu, talking about the privacy sustainability paradox. Harald is Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft Austria, with a special focus on social innovation and the impact of new technology on society. Many of you might also know him as frequent keynote speaker on how to leverage new technology trends for innovative business models. Harald, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I just want to briefly touch the exponential growth trend and give you some food for thought. The adoption of highly personalized digital service is still growing exponentially. Interestingly, the overall IT consumption is not. But we see a disproportional growth pattern in the demand for digital privacy. But this expectation will get in conflict with the high energy uptake of encryption soon, as long as we treat all data the same. So I expect that soon we will have to reconsider encryption usage in the context of our sustainability goals. But I'm very optimistic today because the IT industry is continuously innovating. Did you know that in 1999, someone predicted that information technology will use 50% of US electricity in 10 years? But the reality is IT uses about 5% of electricity use in total, and total isn't growing much, if at all. In 2015, it has been predicted data center electricity will grow threefold in 8 years and 15-fold until 2030. But the reality is global data center electricity use grow only 6% from 2010 to 2018 compared to 7 times computing output growth, 11 times IP traffic growth, and 26 times storage capacity growth. So, and if you don't believe in my numbers, you should download the latest Kumi publication, Facts and Fiction about Computing and the Environment, from this June 2021. You will find a lot of good evidence there. So growth in data use, data transfers, or computation don't necessarily imply growth in computing electricity use. There are a lot of misconceptions in the market currently. But why do these stories stick in our minds so hard? An Italian, the amount of energy needed to delete misinformation is 10 times greater than the amount of energy needed to create misinformation. This is called the Brandi's law now. It means that accurate data will always trail misinformation because it's harder and takes longer to get things right. And by the way, social media amplifies this asymmetry. But at the end, what will keep the overall energy consumption under control? It's continuous improvement, especially fast innovation cycles in implementing and optimizing privacy risk measures like encryption, checksums, and building on the enormous economies of scale we achieve in these cloud hyperscale data centers now. So in summary, the core of the future IT has to be smart concepts again, like data governance, understanding of network effects, and building on strong economies of scales. Thank you.
Thanks, Harald. It was very efficient and economic. You did it under 5 minutes. Thanks for that.
As promised.
Great. Our third speaker, who is now more time, is Bernhard Zimmermann, raising the question whether the craving for computer power is compatible with sustainability. Bernhard is partner at Zurich Engineering, and he holds 3 master degrees in computer science. He looks back to more than 20 years of experience in the area of enterprise security. Bernhard, this is your chance.
So thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Harald, for the digital minutes I got from you. So I will surround a little bit around the topic sustainability and how, as you said, is the craving for power of computing power compatible with the sustainability topic. So as you all may know, more and more business models have a digital component. So the demand itself for computing power is constantly increasing. So from my point of view, what can we do to realize now more sustainable software solutions in terms of data security, technology, design, and infrastructure? So maybe let's start with the technology point first. I think Richard Brown in his first session also mentioned the topic blockchain, which is a very cool technology to legitimate transactions without needing a third person. So, for example, we at Zülke developed a blockchain-based real estate investment platform for Swiss Life, where their customers can invest in real estate per square meter. So they do not need to buy a complete flat, they can invest per square meter. But the trade-off in terms of sustainability with this technology is that you have to have multiple identical data storage. And this, of course, consumes more data storage and therefore more energy in the end. And even worse is, for example, the biggest use case of blockchain called Bitcoin, where you need a huge amount of energy to mine the Bitcoins itself. But there are also other technologies which in terms of sustainability makes a lot of sense. For example, high performance computing. Most of you may have heard about it for simulating in the automotive sector, where you do not need physical testing to realize simulations to save resources and of course to have more secure cars. And we put this simulation concept into other sectors, for example, the insurance sector, where we use HPC, high performance computing, to outsource intensive monthly calculations. So that means we are moving this calculation amount out of the local data center to a more efficient cloud data center. And there you do not have to have reserve resources in your own data center. You can use the much more efficient and more sustainable resources in the cloud data center. And the positive side effect of using this technology in other sectors is that you dramatically reduce also your calculation times. And in this example, we use more than 100 servers for just a few minutes to do this job instead of having 1 to 2 days in calculation time. The second topic I want to talk about is about data security. And a good example for sustainable computing technologies is authentication. Maybe every one of you uses applications on their smartphone, and you maybe have realized that you don't need to register a new user with every application. You can use your public authentication, for example, for Facebook, Microsoft, or your Google account with this application. Also, in terms of e-commerce, this technology is a cool thing because you do not have to register a new user. You can use your Facebook account and you can buy your items. And in terms of sustainability, this is a cool thing because the credentials are only at one location. It also secures your data, and you do not have to spread your information and, of course, storage costs on this side. And only the result of the authentication is then transferred to your application or the website. Another interesting topic around data security is the so-called data circles. What is this thing about? So as you all may know, every company is growing its own data stack. So when you compare the respective data, you will find a lot of redundancies. And data circles help to overcome the necessity to do everything by your own, in your own data center, for example. So you can use very specialized data circles where the quality is very high. It saves money, infrastructure, and in the end, energy. And so you have a better sustainability footprint. So data circles is an interesting concept, especially for B2B data sharing, and everyone who is in this area should have definitely an eye on it. And of course, data anonymization is also part of this concept, so it also goes into this direction of data security. The last thing I wanted to mention is design and infrastructure, and building sustainable software solutions is always a combination of those two, design and infrastructure. As Harald already mentioned before, optimizing the sustainable footprint, you could use cloud computing technologies, and this could be a real game changer in terms of sustainability, because cloud data centers operate much more efficient than traditional data centers. For example, a typical workload for using cloud computing, the first step is always a customer-facing, a public service like a customer portal. And this is normally the first starting point if you go into the cloud direction. And therefore, if you operate such customer portals, you also have to connect your own applications to this cloud technology. And so these true hybrid scenarios come into place where you combine public clouds with your own data center for one solution. And this is an interesting topic because every IT strategy now has a clear roadmap with their applications which to move into the cloud and not in a huge time frame. And here is exactly where the typical responsible design concept comes in, because to have a clear benefit from this technology in terms of sustainability, you have to modernize your applications to use these cloud native services, for example, for storing your data in a fully managed database table. And you usually also have new technology stacks where you have a much more secure data handling and less use of computing power. So in terms of sustainability, a good topic. And of course, the goal should also be to have a better customer experience. So all this together, we see a lot of areas where we can influence the amount of computing power to have a more sustainable software solutions. And I'm very happy to discuss this with you later. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Bernhard. And I guess we will be putting your HPC reality to the academic test, because we have now our next speaker, who is Ivona Brandic, analyzing whether streaming is the new flying. Ivona is professor at the Vienna University of Technology, more specifically for high-performance computing systems at the Institute of Information System Engineering. In 2015, she was awarded the FWF Start Prize, which is the highest Austrian award for early career researchers. Ivona, let's have your pitch.
Yeah, hello, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here today and to talk about my vision about the future of computing. And we have heard today about many different trends about AI, machine learning, blockchain. And for me, as a computer scientist, it's very difficult to try to predict future, because many developments in computer science happen just by chance, or they are byproduct of other development. Cloud computing is the best example for that. No one wanted ever to invent cloud computing. It was just a byproduct of Amazon. The same is for email, and the same is also for internet. No one wanted to invent internet. It is a result of Cold War and heavy military activities. But what I'm talking today about are the problems that we are going to have in the future, and they are related to the energy consumption of our IT infrastructure. And this is going to increase exponentially unless we have fundamental changes in the technology and fundamental changes in our behavior. So I'm going to talk about 5 problems we are going to have in the future. And the first problem is the evolution of algorithms that we experience today. So in the past, we had software engineers coding the programs. Nowadays, we have AI or meta programs that analyze huge amounts of data in order to code programs automatically. Well, our architecture that we are using today, and we are using all von Neumann architecture, they are not built for this type of computation. And the data is growing faster than the computational power. So if we keep increasing computational power, as the data is growing, our computers are going to melt because of the heat. So we will have fundamental change in the architectures we are using, probably to quantum computing or neuromorphic computing, which uses just a fraction of electricity to do the same computation like ordinary architectures. So this is the first problem. The second problem is the locality of the IT. Nowadays, we have computers in the one hand, and then we have things, items. In the future, everything will be a computer, a shopping cart, a bulb, a car, a bicycle. And as we have more things and they communicate with each other, we need more electricity to operate them. The third problem that we are going to have is the evolution of human behavior, because many things are done now digitally. Best example is streaming, watching movies. Rainy weekend, I don't watch just one movie, I watch 2, 3, 5, or 7. No matter how cheap and efficient it is, people consume more. This is the typical rebound effect. And this is going really to increase the energy consumption. I have just some numbers. Currently, cryptocurrency activities have the same energy consumption of Singapore or Iraq. Also, CO2 footprint of video streaming worldwide is equivalent to the CO2 footprint of Spain. And currently, all Austrian hydropower plants on Danube are used to cover the demand of the electricity for the IT. So these are the facts today. Right. So why this is going to be a problem in IT in particular? Because the electricity is the only power source in IT. We cannot substitute. I cannot power my smartphone with hydrogen because the converter would be, 10 times as big. So the electricity is the major power source. And in Europe, electricity is produced to high percentage by green resources. But the worldwide, 88% of the electricity are produced by fossil fuels. For example, in Iraq, electricity is produced by oil. In India, it's produced by coal, and so on and so on. So the worldwide, it is a really problem, and it's going to be a huge CO2 footprint for the increased demand for electricity. As I said, unless we change our behavior and unless we switch to fundamentally different technologies like quantum computing or neuromorphic computing. And then the first and the fifth problem I'm talking today about is the decreased trust in IT. And this is also related what Harald Leitenmu told us. We have billions of devices around us that are going to be actually computers. We have communication, we have now payload data, but on top, because we want to keep our privacy and security, we add another layer of privacy, another layer of security, and so on. So we need more energy to store data, we need more energy to process data, and this is going again to increase the demand for the electricity, unless there is a fundamental change in the technology that we have today. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ivona. I feel a little bad for having this event virtually now, but I guess we'll have to live with it. Our next speaker is Taras Iakymchuk. Sorry, Taras, I pronounced it a couple of times before. It's a very difficult name. Looking at independent smart devices and whether or not to marry machine learning with the Internet of Things. Taras is Chief Technology Officer at Brummerei with years of experience in hardware design, a PhD in electronics from the University of Valencia, and a deep-rooted passion for artificial intelligence. Taras, let's hear you out.
Hello, is my audio okay?
Yes, thanks.
Great. So in 1943, Thomas Watson, who was the chairman of the IBM, he estimated that the total size of the world market for computers is around 5 pieces. But today we have more than 10 computers for every man, woman, and child on the planet. Most of them are very small. They're hiding in your microwave, robotic vacuum cleaner, or smart home camera. A tiny computer controls your car engine. Another two, for the sake of safety, they are parallelized. They're working in brake assistance system. Your home thermostat now has more processing power than the Apollo lunar lander once had. Systems like those, they are called embedded systems, tiny computers that are indispensable parts of something that is not a computer. The very first embedded revolution, it happened in the mid-80s with the creation of the microcontroller, a true one-chip computer for everything, for universal usage. This made our electronics much similar and cheaper than ever. And around 15 years ago, the rapid growth of the wireless connectivity and the rapid decline of the prices for wireless hardware, they have coined a concept of Internet of Things. And Internet of Things undoubtedly changed the way how we interact with devices we own, and opened all new areas of using the embedded connected devices, saving millions and millions of human workforce in the field of data collection and data exchange. Well, now maybe it's a time for like the third wave of revolution. The machine learning, that boom that started around 2012, didn't apply to embedded systems until recently. The neural networks were very computationally complex, very large, and way too power hungry to be efficiently used in the embedded. Fortunately, it's changing now. And the machine learning brings enormous potential for that embedded field. Like, wouldn't you like to have your video doorbell to recognize and distinguish your friends from the strangers? A TV that can recognize that nobody is watching it and switching it off? Maybe you dream of a lawnmower that can take off your backyard on its own. And all those things are actually possible with the power of machine learning. However, to make it really happen, the machine learning must become even more smaller and more efficient than it is now. The algorithms, they must run on those embedded devices themselves, not on the cloud servers. I don't know if all of you realize that as of today, all our voice assistants, Alexa, Siri, others, so all smart home cameras, smart doorbells, they are all sending their recordings, audio and video, to the manufacturer's servers. With the machine learning on the edge, maybe we finally won't be surveilled by our home appliances. Another big problem is the security of the IoT devices. The situation getting worse every year, but if the system is not connected to the internet, you cannot hack into it, right? this is another enormous promise that can be brought by the embedded intelligence, embedded machine learning. And think about agriculture. How can it be much more efficient and greener with smart robotics and more affordable for small farmers if those autonomous driving algorithms can be executed on a cheap, low-power hardware, not $2,000 NVIDIA portable supercomputers? Our construction sites and plants that can be much more safer when the machines will be aware of the working environment, reporting the malfunctions before they will fail. We can teach microcontrollers to detect anomalies in the manufacturing processes. We can teach them to distinguish our crops from the weeds, remove the parasites from the fish farms. From the intelligent supervision of the steel melting process to the cat door that will open only for your pet, the machine learning can do the job. The very first meetup about tiny machine learning, TinyML, it happened in 2019 and it had around 2,000 participants. And now it involves hundreds of companies all over the world. It is very challenging but very rewarding market that demands new software, new hardware paradigms, new type of engineers that can marry those two things embedded in machine learning, and potentially new legal regulations about usage and IP property in that field. So stay tuned for the exciting future when even the smallest machines will be intelligent.
Thanks, Taras. This was very enlightening, and this was also the perfect bridge to our next speaker, which is Jakub Pietrasik, on how machine learning is actually bringing law to the edge. Jakub is one of our own senior lawyers at Wolf Theiss, specialized, amongst other things, in new technology law. In the course of his career, Jakub has dealt with technology transfer projects, the commercialization of intellectual property rights, as well as numerous R&D projects and their legal pitfalls. Jakub, I'm happy to have you today.
Thank you, Andrea. Hello, everyone. Let me introduce myself once again. I'm Jakub Pietrasik. I'm a legal advisor in Poland, and I develop IP TMT practice in Wolf Theiss Warsaw office. I would like to talk about how to protect your machine learning investment. In fact, this issue is pretty problematic and the law does not offer a complex solution. That is why I titled my presentation, Machine Learning is Bringing Law to the Edge, as definitely in the future, new legal concepts will have to be adopted to fully cover legal issues connected with artificial intelligence, including machine learning. So, generally, to build a machine learning model, you need time, money, and effort. But your client or competitor can potentially duplicate the model and steal it from you. How to avoid this? There is no simple answer, as machine learning processes involve many different stages and elements. This is why, in a first step, we need to identify main elements of machine learning, and then we can move forward to talk about protective rights. So, for me as a lawyer, not an IT guy, the most important are, first of all, data sets, which are used for training the model. Additionally, we have machine learning systems. So this is architecture, software, and hardware that implements machine learning. And finally, we have a machine learning model itself. So some kind of algorithm that allows, after training, to find patterns and correlations in big data sets and make decisions based on such analysis. For example, identify cats or burglars on pictures. Having in mind these three main elements of machine learning process, as I said, there is no simple answer on how to protect them because each and every single element can be protected under different IP rights. Long story short, in my opinion, there are four main IP rights under which we can protect the machine learning models and procedures. So these are copyrights, patents, database rights, and trade secrets. Copyrights, number one. To be protected under the copyrights, there must be a work and some kind of creative effort of an author of the work. So, for example, a simple list of dates is not copyrighted, but a sentence using these dates could be. Going back to machine learning, data or materials used for training the model may be protected under the copyrights, but please remember that there must be a creativity involved. So, for example, when we talk about data classification descriptors, if categories are chosen through a creative process like beautiful, ugly, strong, weak, or big, small, then the training set could be protected by copyright through this creative labeling. But if a classification is based on factual elements like cat, dog, or traffic light, street light, parking sign, this does not involve any creativity, therefore it does not allow for copyright protection. Please also remember that copyrights protect software, so copyrights will apply to machine learning models implemented into the software. Number 2, patents. Patents protect inventions. Invention must be innovative, in a meaning that it must bring some novelty to the state of technology. So if there is no such novelty, then the invention will not be patentable. Patents are quite tricky, I think, because generally they protect systems using machine learning models. It is important to note that in many jurisdictions, for example in Poland, software as such is not patentable. Additionally, methods and algorithms also are not patentable. Only machines or systems embedding such models or algorithms can be protected by patents. Number 3, database. Database rights protects databases. The main requirement to qualify for a database is the substantial investment that must be made in the creation or maintenance of the data in the database. In practice, this database rights, this is a very important category in the whole machine learning process, as many entities specialize in collecting data and selling them to companies training their models. Number 4, trade secrets. Finally, these are classified confidential information of a given entity. They are very often qualified as some type of know-how, which is non-public. So typically, companies guard their trade secrets by signing non-disclosure agreements. Generally, NDAs and other agreements are used to protect almost all elements of machine learning models. We can try to protect each element of machine learning under copyrights, patents, etc., but always we should also cover them by strict NDA agreements. Summing up, apart from these 4 types of IP protected rights, there are of course many other legal and non-legal issues connected with machine learning processes, like for example data protection issues, quality of data, and practical issues on how to prove that, for example, someone uses your specific data set or your trained model. So are copyrights, patents, etc. enough for the future of technology and future of law? In my opinion, definitely not. But right now, this is all we have. Thank you for the opportunity of having this short speech, and I'm looking forward for Q&A session at the end of the webinar.
Thanks, Jakub. That brings us straight to our next speaker on artificial intelligence and legal challenges around that. Anna Pavlovchik, addressing challenges with the newly proposed AI regulation. Anna is head of legal of the Endava Adriatic region and general manager of Endava Slovenia. As an IT lawyer, Anna is closely involved in the development and deployment of new technologies, both product and service-wise. Anna, looking forward to your speech.
I'm talking a bit on a new proposed AI regulation. This is something that we've been talking within the legal practice and industry for quite some time, trying to answer the question whether how AI should be regulated and whether any such regulation will influence future innovation. So now we are in front of this proposed draft, which is a first attempt to do so for now in European Union. And at the first look, we see some sort of extension to GDPR. It is GDPR-like in technique, and it has some points joined, which are the same for the both. It is first of all focused on protection of individuals, and on the other side, most strict, the strictest and the greatest requirements are placed on the data and data sets that are actually used in the AI system. So from the perspective of the technology or any other company, if we want to go ahead before the implementation of this regulation, we can do something right now. First of all, decide whether we are falling within the scope of this regulation by answering the question, what is actually regulated, what kind of AI, and who is subject to compliance to this regulation. If we want to answer the first question, so everybody agrees, both lawyers and data scientists, that the definition of AI as it is now written in the regulation is very wide. But on the other hand, it is obvious that focus here is on those AI systems which are considered as a high risk AI system. However, we should take also in mind that the regulation was obviously made on the basis of use cases that were known or are known at the time of drafting, and we can expect in future that those lists of the list of covered AI system under this regulation will be just wider and broader. On the other hand, we have the question who is actually obliged to comply with regulation. So those are providers and users or AI system, obviously. Providers could be those who develop, order to be developed, deploy, test, train, put into market, as well as those users which just change something in the AI system. So wide range of subjects could be actually subject to this regulation, and this will cause in future a lot of questions around how to split this liability. Obviously, ultimately accountable for the system will be that one who deploys it, who puts it in the market and their brand. But we need to also think about that AI systems are complex, and almost never you will see the same entity developing it and then testing, training, and at the end of the day, deploying it and putting it into market. So there will be a need for a split of responsibility between all these subjects. So what companies are, if company finds themselves in focus of regulation, so what we need to do, compliance, cost of compliance, first of all, that will be the major consequence to the companies, is significant. That kind of compliance that is required by this regulation would need from the side of the company to implement certain measures on technical, organizational, and commercial level. Companies will need to assess their system from the technical point of view to see if there are some additional layers to be added to the software in order to comply with the fundamental principles in development, or they will decide to remove some, or maybe completely ban and just decide to walk away from any kind of risky AI system. On the organizational side, there will be new processes to be implemented with respect to compliance, quality control measures, additional people for human oversight, and for actually implementing all these additional organizational and technical measures. And it all requires time, resources, and money. And I believe that only those companies who can afford that will actually be the winners in this and continue with actually deploying and putting on market a risky AI system. And finally, we need to also make sure that commercially we are covered with respect to risk allocation. We will see probably in the future a lot of new warranties, indemnities, and risk allocation provisions in contracts. New requirements for new types of insurances probably, as well as requirements for complying with standards that are already in preparation with respect to AI. So yeah, that's in short from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, for condensing this complex topic in such a concise summary. Next in line is Janos Toth, continuing with this topic and looking how AI is pushing the boundaries of law and practice, especially in the healthcare sector. Janos is a partner at Wolf Theiss, advising in a variety of industries such as healthcare and life sciences, fast-moving consumer goods, and TMT. Janos is a well-known expert in the area of new law, and we're very, very happy to present him today.
Thank you, Andrea, and very warm welcome to our attendees. It's my privilege to share the floor with this distinguished panel. Going to try to talk about AI and healthcare in a legal context. Aging population and rapid development of technology is obviously changing the health and medical services. And just partly following up on what we heard from Anna just now, there are a couple of interesting legal topics to discuss there. Behind any new solution, there is data, and behind data, there is the algorithm and ultimately machine learning, which attempts to spot patterns in data. And this is far from what programmers have been doing until now, telling computers what to do. Today, computers are given access to a huge amount of data and are instructed to extract data what they need and make an informed decision. And the results are already better than before when we gave instructions to the machines themselves, which were obviously narrowly defined. We are looking at a new wave of computing in medical services. It's going to be AI applying to all manner of health, really. We are going to take a health issue, turn it practically into a prediction problem, and then solve it with the autonomous healing solutions. By AI, we mean machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning, and all the different ways of taking data with algorithms, or even programs that write themselves. And such application of AI is visible, I think, in three ways. It increases the scale of what we can do. It increases the speed at which we can operate, obviously, and also it improves the accuracy of what human can otherwise achieve. And the possible health applications here are really countless. For example, AI has been used in pathology, where it is already able to identify more markers which indicate cancerous cell samples than what has been known to scientists. Also, AI and big data are accelerating the application of genomic information to the diagnosis and treatment of cancer and other chronic diseases. An individual's genome contains a great deal of personal information, obviously, which our privacy laws already protect. And very, very small bits of that information, of the genetic information, can be abused if handled improperly. On the other hand, in order to promote innovation in health treatments, regulators must allow the safe sharing of genetic information with researchers across all the platforms, even cross-border among nations. And this raises very sensitive privacy and ethical issues. The point I'm trying to make here is, I think, is that there is a moral obligation to use artificial intelligence for curing diseases. So regulators must respond to legal issues AI raises, including data privacy, rights and ownership, AI decision-making, or even liability for AI mistakes. And the way how those legal issues are answered will obviously shape how the AI technology owners conduct their business and seek to promote their innovation. Privacy is a major challenge. We already heard about that. It's already impacting the medical sector, where algorithms are predicting infections or prevent illnesses, which cannot be really applied without any privacy concerns. But also there is explainability, a challenge. Explainability, or being able to conclusively identify the reasons for a course of action. this is not the way how AI actually works, because of the way how computers are programmed to take their own decisions. And finally, there is a huge issue around making sure that AI is not discriminating against race, ethnicity, gender, or else, because bias can creep into the deep learning system at the input stage, or even at the training stage or elsewhere, and throughout the creation of technology. And while we can control data inputs, the problem deepens when AI makes connections that are beyond our own involvement, and AI can obviously provide a more objective decision, but on the other hand, these issues still need to be addressed before deep learning can be applied without any discrimination. So from a technologist viewpoint, less regulation is better, but it's equally important that no defective or otherwise dangerous AI solutions are released on the market. Perhaps one yardstick for machine learning decisions could be to permit those technologies and their use only after it has been demonstrated through statistical measuring or other means that the outcomes that are achieved by AI surpass what humans can produce. So AI is in healthcare. It has been already pushing the boundaries of law, and I hope I was able to just tackle a handful of legal topics there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Janos. Next in line, we have Astrid Wieland asking the most important question of today, which is the future of computing female? Astrid is business application specialist at Microsoft and co-founder of the new IT Girls. And she describes herself as someone who has accidentally landed in IT after studying business and is now successfully pursuing a tech career. Astrid, you're live on stage now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, is the future of computing female? Well, one thing is for sure, the history of computing definitely is female. Women in technology fields date back to the 18th century, where mathematicians and scientists led the field of computer technology as new methods were rising. But the truth is, a research by William F. Vogel from the University of Minnesota showed that programming or coding was originally seen as a low clerical task and was therefore gendered female. Only once the importance of the industry increased, more and more men entered the field and changed the image of computing. So, according to numerous studies, some of them also described in the worth reading book Invisible Women by Caroline Paris, living in a world that is designed and modeled for a fictional male person can result in anything from annoying, like phones that are always too big for female hands, or that we rarely can reach the hand luggage in airplanes, to actually life-threatening when things like car safety or healthcare and medicine, as mentioned by my previous speaker, are modeled for fictional male persons. Speaking about IT, not fostering a diverse environment not only results in biased algorithms or user-unfriendly software design, it actually addresses our core business, which is solution finding. I guess the idea is simple. 10 different people at a table come to more and different solutions because they have different backgrounds, different perspectives, different experiences. And therefore, the chance is much higher that ultimately they can find that right solution that can bring them forward and actually make a difference. But still, in Austria, we're currently missing 24,000 IT experts. leading to a loss in value creation of 3.8 billion euros per year. Just let that sink for a moment. This is equivalent to 1% of our annual GDP in Austria. And not only IT experts are missing. The World Economic Forum named technology use and technology design as 2 of the top 10 skills for 2025, next to things like analytical thinking, active learning, complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, leadership, resilience, and reasoning. Over the past 2 years, the number of developers at non-tech companies has actually grown faster than at tech companies. So this shows every single job will have a digital component. And this is a societal change where you can't just leave out half of the population. So the bottom line is the future of computing doesn't have to be either male or female. It has to be diverse and inclusive. And here is what I want each of you to do before you leave this room. I want each one of you to make a silent personal commitment to foster diversity. Tell yourself that you believe in the power of diversity, that you can change it, and that from this moment on, you will commit to driving and drawing upon all the talents in your organization and in your industry, and to taking the risk to actually work on a future of computing that is both diverse and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Astrid, for this very well-argued diversity plea. I'm all for it, needless to say. Next in line, we have Mathias Nöbauer looking ahead and asking whether Europe will eventually become the digital colony of the USA or China. Mathias is CEO at Exoscale, a European cloud provider, being part of A1 Digital, where Mathias is a member of the management team responsible for the IT and cloud business. Before that, Mathias was with Microsoft and HP. Mathias, the stage is yours.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and good morning also from my side. In the year 2017, China said, and they said it loud and clear, they would like to surpass the United States when it comes to artificial intelligence. And interestingly, way after I chose the title for this presentation, 2 days ago, the US Senate announced that they will pass a bill, the biggest bill of such kind in US history, which will basically help them to fire up basically their own weapons in the areas of semiconductor manufacturing, artificial intelligence, robotics, and related fields. It's a $250 billion US bill, and it should help basically the US to fight against China in this digital world. So where does the European Union stand here? Where does Europe stand here? And where will be standing in 5 years from now? It's hard to answer, but it's probably a bit easier to answer if we look at where do we stand today. And if we look at where we stand today, it's probably worthwhile to look at it from 2 different perspectives. One perspective is the consumer perspective, the other one, the B2B perspective. From a consumer's perspective, like every one of us has a mobile phone. And by having a mobile phone today, you have either a profile with Apple or you do have a profile with Google. You're using iOS or you're using Android. So a lot of data with those two companies. And we're all using Google Search, we're using Google Maps, many of us are using Facebook, Instagram, and we're buying stuff at Amazon. So that's quite interesting because all those companies, and especially Google and Amazon and Facebook, account for 70% of all digital advertising spending worldwide. And if you consider that of the entire advertising spending, 50% is digital, then this is quite massive. Meaning, like, if you want to sell a product worldwide or if you want to win an election, you cannot pass by those companies. And how does it look in the B2B area, like an area that is like closer to us probably, because many of you are decision makers in that field and own or run data centers, migrating services from your data center to the cloud like everyone does, which makes perfect sense, makes you more agile, more flexible, sometimes even more cost effective, using infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Looking at the market there, it's also in the hand of only a handful of companies. 30% market share goes to Amazon. Amazon Web Services is basically the fastest growing and most profitable business of Amazon. And more than 70% of all cloud services come from US cloud providers or Chinese cloud providers. So you might think, why do we care? I mean, we've used software before from US software vendors, and that's true, we did. But with services, it's different because you're giving a lot of power and control to someone else to run your services, basically. And with that, also a lot of open questions come up, like who has power and control over those services, who can access the data, who can provide access to data to someone else, potentially. And there was a lot of confusion around that. And thanks to Donald Trump, we've got a little bit more clarity because as part of his first budget bill, he also signed a bill called the US Cloud Act. Cloud standing for cloud, but cloud also standing for Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act, meaning who can access data that runs in a US provider's data center, also in Europe or at any other place in the world, if needed. And this US Cloud Act very clearly says, for example, if a small little district court in Tallahassee would like to access data of myself stored in a data center in Austria or within the European Union that is owned and run by a US cloud provider, the US cloud provider needs to give that data, if the request is legit, obviously, to that small little district court in Tallahassee. But what's even more worrying is it also very clearly says that the local government here in Europe or some court or law enforcement institution must not be informed. So it's not allowed to be informed about that action. So that's a bit worrying. And to me, it means that Europe in this case is not a policy maker anymore. We are a policy taker. And as a policy taker, from my perspective, we can consider ourselves as a digital colony. The good thing is, especially in this B2B space, there are alternatives around. There are European cloud providers where you can run your services without any compromise, with leading price-performance ratios. And for 80% of the use cases, you will not have to make any compromise at all. And yeah, that's the good news around. So make your decisions well informed. Consult your legal advisors also with regards to implications of running your services with other companies.
Thanks, Mathias. And thanks for this speech, which somehow looped us back to the beginning of today's session on confidential computing. Next comes up Lukas Johannes Winter on the power of data, or when digitizing construction disrupts global multi-billion euro businesses. Lukas is managing director at Contact. Prior to his role, he was working within the Umdash and MIBA group. Lukas holds degrees from the University of Graz, Berkeley, and Harvard. Lukas, we're very interested to hear your speech.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And as a digital native, after all these interesting talks about all the power of computing, I'd like to take you on a little journey to a specific industry example of the oldest and biggest industry in the world. And as the oldest, I don't mean anything red light district related. We talk about construction. Construction is the biggest industry in the world, and it's the second least efficient. Only hunting and fishing is less productive than construction. And this is a problem for all of us, as if we take a look at the numbers, world population will rise to 11.2 billion people. within the next 80 years, 80% of us will live in cities. And with all this place, it hasn't been built yet. For instance, 8 out of the 10 biggest cities in 80 years will be in Africa, where, for instance, Lagos will most probably be the biggest city in the world with 88 million inhabitants in that one single city. Now, the industry has not in any way been capable of improving its productivity. Actually, since the early 1990s, construction productivity has not risen. So the industry is extremely settled. There is hardly any innovation. And also for technology in construction and computing, it wasn't a very interesting industry so far because construction per se has high risk of different project outcomes. There is tiny return compared to other industries, so it's not interesting for any kind of investment. And these processes are very complex because we've built houses for thousands of years, and the way we do that and we think we build houses is so analog. Nobody needs a computer for that on a construction site. Maybe somehow to some distinct differentiation to, for instance, the automotive industry, which is super young. I mean, it's only 100 years old. And of course, everything there is perfectly synchronized and is all computed in terms of its productivity. But now with the rise of IoT and very user-friendly software, what, for instance, we at Contact do is we digitize all these possibilities and these processes on site. And for instance, what we do is we put software and sensors on construction site, and suddenly so many things that were before just nothing but a little ant colony with just people moving around and trying to build up houses as fast as possible, become very structured. Because with more than 10,000 data points per 24 hours that, for instance, we collect, we understand suddenly, this is a good way to do it. Let's repeat that one. This is a bad way how to do it. We can't repeat that one. We shouldn't repeat that one. So there is a massive collection of data, and we've heard a lot about all the issues that come along with that with the other interesting talks today. And it is simply currently at a tipping point, the construction industry, which is right now also in the Silicon Valley, one of the focus industries, because we start to understand our biggest, our least efficient industry in the world with all the new technology that is out there. And this will drastically change not only the way we build buildings to create all that affordable housing, but this will change the way we will do business in this industry massively. Because processes will change. With processes that change, partners may change, because somebody who hasn't built a house before may build a house. Companies like Amazon or IKEA think about building houses. And also, of course, then contracts will change. So this is something that we've heard from a lot of different industries. Now, why my reason that this is so interesting in construction? Because we're the last to do that. And as we're the last to do that, we have a massive catch-up effect to other industries. And that means the changes in this industry will happen extremely fast. And the core competences future companies will need in construction to work in this digitized world will totally change. For instance, when we filed our patents, we thought other companies may be in a different patent field. No, it was big American IT companies who had patents on topics on construction sites that we now maneuver around and file our patents accordingly. So it is really at a tipping point. Last point, coming back to the legal perspective, I think the way we will define contracts, and everybody of you who has built a house or bought a flat or built a piece of or bought a piece of land knows, it is crucial to create the right incentives for each party to fulfill their part. Now, with all this data and transparency, this will be a total game changer in the way we define legal contracts in construction. We've done amazing work also with the guys from Wolf Theiss on how that may make different incentives in the future. And I'm a big fan of all the changes that can create change in construction industry with new also legal perspectives, because simply if we don't tackle this problem, what we've seen as a refugee crisis in Europe starting in 2015 with all the people trying to cross the Mediterranean Ocean, we are simply obliged to take care of a more affordable housing on this planet. And the only way we can do that is by raising efficiency, because if people don't have houses, they will move. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lukas, for opening this really interesting new perspective on today's topic. And now we have our last speaker of today, which is Wolfgang Freiseisen, on the trustworthiness of autonomous systems. Wolfgang is CEO of Risk Software, and he started out his career as a software developer at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. Amongst many other things, he continued lecturing, for instance, at the Forum Alpbach on the second machine age with learning and autonomous machines. Wolfgang, we're very happy to have you today.
Okay, thank you for introduction, and hello to everyone. I will have a short talk about trustworthiness of autonomous systems, and to give you an impression that this research topic could be of interest for nearly every one of you, I will start with a short story. Imagine the year 2030. You are arriving at Vienna airport. You need a ride to your hotel. You call a taxi using the Uber app, for instance. The taxi arrives at your position, but without any driver. It is an autonomous driving car. And for you, it will be the first time you are using it. What would you think? Shall I enter? Is it safe? Will I get hurt? Does it operate in a secure and correct way? Will it bring me to my hotel in Vienna and not anywhere else? And so on. These are similar questions you will have. And they could be summarized in one question. Can I trust this autonomous driving car? And is it trustworthy? We see trustworthiness is essential in designing autonomous and semi-autonomous technologies, because no trust, no use. Also, trustworthiness is in a mathematical sense not clearly defined. It is a prerequisite for people and societies to develop, to deploy, and use autonomous systems. And autonomous systems operates without human control. It is usually controlled by an AI-based system, which consists of one or more artificial neural networks trained by a huge set of data. The quality of the AI system depends on the quality of data using for training and testing. And the quality of the autonomous system depends, of course, on the quality of the AI system. An autonomous driving car is a very popular example of an autonomous system. It promises to improve our future mobility. But in future, we will not have autonomous systems will not only drive our cars. There will be many other applications of them, maybe in industry, and in logistics, in robotics, healthcare, we heard already today. And our research is already done in autonomous systems in industry and logistics. Referring to the European Ethic Guidelines for Trustworthy AI, a trustworthy autonomous systems has at least 3 components. It should be lawful, ethical, and technical robust. It is clear that all 3 components are necessary for trustworthy AI. There's also a legal context, but however, I will focus on the computational aspects. And there are a lot of computing requirements we have to consider to achieve trustworthiness. I can only mention a few of them here. First, reliability. The question is, does the system work proper in a range of situations with a range of inputs? Then accuracy. How well does the system do on new, maybe unseen data compared to data on which it was trained and tested? Or robustness. How sensitive is the system's output to a change in the input? And we heard already today explainability. Can the system's outcome be justified by an explanation that human can understand? And there will be much more like safety, security, and so on. Concerning these requirements, it leads to 3 non-disjunctive research challenges. First, the verification challenge. How can we prove trustworthiness by the given requirements? We will need new type of algorithms, individual processes, and new kind of certifications procedures. For instance, to prove to verify an autonomous car, it should drive 200 millions of kilometers. That's not really possible in this way. The second, the data challenge. We need different kind of data, sensor data, image streams, and so on, for training, testing, evaluating, simulating. We have to generate data in order to simulate the unseen world, and we have to collect real-world data in a high quality for control and verification. And last but not least, the AI challenge, of course. AI is somehow the brain of an autonomous system. Actually, there are many unsolved problems using AI techniques. Self-learning during operation sounds easy. It works fine on supervised models if you have enough time and enough computing power. But in the real-time case, with limited resources, it could be a big challenge. And the big vision could be to develop an AI having something like self-awareness in order to become a trustworthy system. So I think the future of computing has to be trustworthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang, and thanks once more to all of our speakers. That was our finalist speech for today, and I would now like to open the floor for our Q&A session. It's always a little bit difficult to be the first in this Q&A round. I'll just pick one of the questions that have been submitted via the chat function from Sandor Miglesh. Sandor, if you want to speak up, just let me know. Or otherwise, I will be glad to read out your question. I think it goes to Bernhard or Harald, namely the electricity consumption of IT has grown approximately 5% in absolute amount, or, and that is the question, only relatively to all consumption.
Yeah,
Harald would like to answer.
Covered by Harald, I think.
Yeah, I can take this question. It relates to the absolute amount. It's quite interesting that in 2010, there was a tipping point, more or less the peak of energy consumption. And since then, it decreases slightly. But what's key here, that considers the overall IT ecosystem. Yeah? So it's not only compute, so it's from devices, TV sets to printers, and so that's all included in these figures. Yeah, what we see in that ecosystem, that the consumption shifts. For example, from dedicated devices to apps, because more people use smartphones and apps for certain things. Yeah, so there's a big shift going on currently. Yeah, that's quite interesting, I think.
Thank you, Harald. And since Bernhard is already on the screen, I think we have a follow-up question to you from Niklas Schmidt. Niklas, would you like to speak up yourself? If not, I will read it out. It says, thanks, Bernhard, for your presentation. You had mentioned the electricity usage of Bitcoin mining. Since Elon's last tirade, this is very much in the public focus. But why is the electricity usage of, say, artificial intelligence not being discussed similarly? Niklas Sun, for example, is using a cluster of 50 GPUs, graphical processing units, with thousands of processing cores for his small research project at university. And this is just a drop in the ocean compared to all research institutions and worldwide trainings of machine learning models, and possibly using of a lot more electricity. Maybe this is also for Ivona or Taras to answer, and thanks, Niklas, is the message.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. This is a real topic, because not only the things around machine learning come into this, also the terms of simulation and so on. As I mentioned, in the automotive sector, we are using a lot of compute power. It doesn't matter if it's simulation or data analytics, it's simply the same. But you have to challenge yourself. what you really need to simulate or to analyze from the original mindset before, because as I said, simulation makes a lot of sense in the automotive sector because you save resources and hopefully you save lives because you have more secure cars, so less accidents with death, for example. And this is always the balance you have to find with data analytics, not to analyze everything you want, but be clear what you want to analyze and only analyze these topics you really want to achieve to save energy. So I'm a big fan of this question because it really goes into the mindset. Think about what you want to analyze and is it worth to analyze or not? And in the end, to consume power for it, yes.
Niklas, does it answer the question? He says yes, thanks in the chat.
Thanks for the question, really good one.
Roland, I know you're eager to drop one or two of your own questions.
Staying with the same topic, maybe. I mean, there was something very interesting about Ivona said. The change in the behavioral patterns, and I'm not sure whether these figures presented, which show slightly increasing power consumption already factoring this current and also the future change in the way how we use the technology in general. So this would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is, I mean, the best example is what we are doing today, right? So we are not sitting in a presentation room and discussing. We are all sitting in front of his and her computer and we are streaming. So we currently have 43 streams. And in my lecture on energy efficient distributed system, this would be the first exercise to calculate the energy consumption of our lecture today. Okay, so we basically change the behavior because we do things in other way, and it involves, I mean, this pandemic that we are now in the middle of, this pandemic is the best example how the behavior is changing. And it results in more and more digital interactions, which causes, again, more energy consumption. And another thing is what I would also like to add to the previous question, why the AI and machine learning are so energy inefficient. There is a machine learning and there is machine learning. There is a machine learning where you learn a model and then you infer all the time. But there is a machine learning where the situation changes, the data distribution changes. So you have to learn your model again and again and again and again. So you have to collect data again and again and again and learn the model. The best example is smart traffic. There is an accident, so what you have learned, it doesn't hold anymore. And this is the very, very tedious and consuming task. You have to collect data again and again and again to learn new models. And as I said, the architectures that we are having today are just not built for this type of computation. And this is also what results in increased energy consumption.
Thank you. Maybe coming to another topic. We learned that Europe seems to have lost its role as a policy maker and drifts towards being a policy taker or subject to it. Maybe a question to the panel with respect to the GDPR or to the AI framework of the Commission. Yeah? Are we on the right path? Is it the correct way to proceed, or should we simply be more liberal, just in order not to stay close to the technology drivers like the US and China?
Maybe Roland, from the perspective of construction, if I may.
Yeah.
What we do is we collect massive data on construction sites to understand the construction process better, as I said. And I love the GDPR because with that framework, we are in a framework where I am fully certain that all we do is we collect technical data to understand the insights of the industry process. And at the same time, protect the personal data of the people doing the work. And this gives us a level of authenticity that my competitors from the US or Asian markets that may have a similar piece of software are instantly in a shady light where I am not.
And I mean, to add to that, maybe because since I brought the topic with Europe up, and I probably intentionally said it a bit bold, whatever I said. Nevertheless, we should not forget that GDPR is one of the biggest export hits worldwide, because countries like Mexico, Canada, and many other countries have adopted GDPR or GDPR-like legislation. I mean, it is a bit complex, hard to get your head around. Good business for law firms, I guess. But at the end of the day, I think it's a cultural thing. I think we in Europe value data privacy, which is a bit in contrast to other places on this planet. And I think we should remain bold and fight for our values, basically, and make very conscious decisions. And many of us here in this round are making those decisions on a daily basis.
Thanks, Mathias. Go ahead, Roland.
Any further questions from the audience or otherwise?
I received another question to Astrid. Astrid, you were making a plea for more diversity in the IT sector and tech sector in general. The question says, what are your suggestions for incentives?
You mean for incentives to have a more diverse workforce?
Incentivizing more female talent into the IT sector.
Yeah, I think there are several points where we can start. So one thing is, I think companies need to understand that it's actually a value for them because they will benefit from having a more diverse workforce. And it's not just about gender diversity, but obviously there are a lot of different aspects to it. There are studies showing that it actually brings economic value to companies. Companies who have more females in the task force are bringing more and higher profits, for example. Employees are staying there longer, they're more loyal because they feel better. And to be honest, I think to incentivize women to actually go there, it's important to break the image of this male-dominated world in the IT. I mean, I'm in the IT now since 7 years, and I know how it can feel if you're the only women in a room. So I'm very happy today that I actually had other women joining me on the panel, which is not very typical usually. But I think it's a lot about showing that there are other women, creating buddy systems, maybe also in the company where you connect women who are already there with women who are new joiners so that they feel welcome. They can exchange with someone on a more personal level about all these situations, for example. This could be one of many ideas, but I could talk for hours now.
Thanks. Being aware of time, sorry?
I would just like to add, to Andrea with respect to this incentivizing of women in IT. I cannot agree more. I would just like to stress attention actually one step before. Actually, how do we incentivize women to actually go study IT? Because we were looking at some statistics, I'm just talking about the region. It is very, scary, small number of girls actually, studying IT-related faculties. So maybe start from that, and then we will come to the companies and employment, definitely.
Right, thanks, Anna. And being aware of time, now we have 3 women on screen against 1 man. So I think this is a very good outlook to finish our session of today. Thank you very much, Roland, to you as our host, to all of our speakers and participants for sharing your know-how and contributing to the Wolf Theiss, the future of series. If you're hungry for more insight into what the future might look like, stay tuned and register for our next event on the future of communication, taking place on the 24th of June. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day and see you next time around.